Mistakes were made. Hello and welcome to the Nen Show Podcast. I am your host, Craftsdwarf. Here with my co-host, Mathwiz. Say hello, Mathwiz.
You know, if I was really into this, I would do like I'd even consider like, that could be a fun little intro. We could do like a wrestling introduction, like
do a wrestling promo for the
promote
Nen
it and
Show.
stuff. And we're not quite there yet. Like this isn't even really sparking like my wrestling themed enthusiasm. Like I notice references. But
Okay.
like But
Yeah. So I think. We'll go over personal histories in a moment I guess I'll explain, in case you haven't listened to Nen Show and you decided, I'm going to listen to Kinnikuman first. You know, not One Piece, or Naruto, or Ashita Joe, or Hunter x Hunter, Kinnikuman. No, if that's the case, then great. But also, I just, really? But anyway, basically we read Shounen manga, and arc by arc. And that's, that about covers it. But, generally speaking, we do talk about comments, so if you have anything to say, both of you listening to this, go and leave a comment. We'll read them, and maybe we'll be like, hey, that was a cool comment, or we'll respond to something. And the other big thing is that after Kinnikuman, we are doing the Patreon poll. So for the next patron pick, quite a few people unpatroned. So actually, some of the like major ones that got a lot of votes last time, the person who requested it did not like. They're not patron anymore, so that that means the option comes off. So if you want a certain series to be on the poll, patron, and the poll will be going up when we record episode 2. So that's 2 weeks from today, and 2 weeks from today as we're talking, and 1 week. Well, maybe Mathwiz is moving, so there might be delays. So basically the idea when we record the next episode, so it'll be 1 week before episode 2 comes out. At earliest, that would be 2 weeks from now, which is a week after this episode comes out. So a week from when you're listening to this. So if you're not a patron if you're a patron and you haven't suggested your pick for the poll before then I would recommend it. The poll will go for 2 weeks, so it'll be 1 week before and after episode 2 actually comes out. And then after Kinnikuman, we'll be reading whatever gets voted. So be sure to patron if you have a specific thing you want read, and if you just want to vote, then wait a little bit and patron for the vote. And that about covers it. So, personal histories for Kinnikuman. I have a feeling you don't have much, or you haven't really. I think we talked about it. So
the difference between like this and like Joe. At least like with Ashita Joe, I had known a couple of different people who were recommending it to me, or even just like random commenters. It's like, oh, this is a classic of, the medium, influenced a lot of stuff. A lot of people. So it's like, it's a classic, so people will mention it enough that there was like a reputation built up going into it. Whereas with this one, I know that it's like partially like an inspiration for certain different manga. Various, obviously, big Jump authors have cited it as an influence. But I haven't heard many people talk about reading it. So this is where, like, as far as, if the Nen Show podcast makes us like shonen experts, like I haven't really had that feeling before this point. But now reading this, I'm kind of like, you know what? Who has read Kinnikuman that discusses Shonen Jump stuff? At least like on YouTube. So this is where I feel like, okay, I'm getting a little, or
even watched it, right, because it's like, this is like Ashita Joe is like well known and well regarded, but like because that's as you were saying that, I realized like Joe I would read because it's a good manga. Kinnikuman, not at that point yet. Like, and maybe it gets better. Like there was definitely like improvement from like the first episodic stuff to the actual like kind of narrative, but. I'm not saying I enjoy it yet, but as far as personal history goes, so obviously neither of us have read it before, so no spoilers. The only thing I do know is that I did see some of Ultimate Muscle on 4Kids, which is the Boruto to Kinnikuman. I believe it's called Kinnikuman ni Dai, or like the second, Kinnikuman the second, versus there's Kinnikuman ni Sei, which is like, okay, here's my understanding of the publication history, is Kinnikuman started in 79 or 75, or no, it would have been 79. Yeah. I got mixed up with something I'll talk about later. Then it ended in 1987. That was the first like 37 volume run, and then it restarted after Ultimate Muscle. Basically, that ran for like 30 or 40 volumes, and then Kinnikuman 2, which so if you look on my item list, Kinnikuman is listed as ongoing because like Kinnikuman 2 is just considered the same series, I guess. Like that's where the volumes apparently it's in volume like 60 plus now because it just resumed from like 38 basically. So as far regarding the Nen Show, part of Ultimate Muscle is translated and part of Kinnikuman 2 is translated. Like I'm just gonna call it Ultimate Muscle just because it's like less confusing than just Kinnikuman the second or Kinnikuman 2. It's like they're too similar for me at least. So if Ultimate Muscle ever gets fully translated, we might read that and catch up to the ongoing material. But for now, we're just gonna read the original run, the first 37 volumes.
This whole thing makes me frustrated though, because on Mal it's all listed as one thing, so I can't even mark it off as completed when we're done with it.
Well, hopefully someone will, because apparently at least a bunch of the Ultimate Muscle volumes were released in English, but they're not like online. So, because it would have been a manga like Ultimate Muscle's on TV, so maybe some people would read the manga, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I guess no one cared about it enough back then to want to file the volumes and upload them or something like that. And so yeah. No spoilers past what we've read in the material, please. Like, aside from, I guess, that Kinnikuman has a child who becomes a hit main character of the series, but that's, like, whatever. So I guess to get into the discussion, where do we fucking start?
See, the thing about, like, Kinnikuman, definitely these earlier chapters... For one, I don't have much of like a Toku reference. Yes. I haven't really watched anything of it. So on that sense, a lot of the jokes kind of go over my head. But then it's also just a lot of like
funny.
A lot of it is also like general like cultural stuff in Japan. And a lot of it specifically focused on like the time period, specifically like 1979, 1980.
I love the one the one translator note you showed me where it's like disco is still popular at this point. I thought that was funny.
There's a lot of so like the most I can really get out of a lot of the stuff, because there's like references to like actors or baseball players or other manga that were being published at the time. And so, like, at best, the most I can kind of get out of those is, like, hey, Hisashi Eguchi was on a page. He wrote Stop Hibari-kun, which he hadn't actually wrote yet at this time.
Yeah.
So it's, like, the most I can get out of it is, like, oh, I recognize this thing.
Yeah.
But most of it I don't recognize. So it's, like, maybe to someone living in Japan or someone aware of, the context of life in Japan at the time, maybe the jokes were funny to them, but for me, like, I don't know most of the stuff, so I'm just like things happen, next chapter things happen, next chapter things happen.
Yeah, we have the we're pretty far removed from material, not just like the time period, but especially the culture, where like a kid growing up would recognize they were keeping up with Ultraman or and watching Godzilla movies, and they'd know some of these other celebrities or sports stars, like they'd recognize all that, but we don't. So there's that barrier that keeps us from going, so that was the but I guess because you do, and I do think that's one kind of interesting thing about this is because I have some of the Toku knowledge and you have the wrestling knowledge, so we kind of like come at it from different angles, which is kind of cool. Did you have anything specifically you want to say about the wrestling, or any like notable references you thought even from later? Just like because the only one I really recognized, I think there was like two characters, like Sheik and excuse me if I'm mispronounced, or Sheik and Abdullah, which I recognized as wrestler names, but I don't remember what time period they were from.
Yeah, there are a bunch of little. Okay. I didn't like mark any of them because I didn't. I don't want to. I don't feel like it would be a very interesting discussion if I just like stop and point out like, hey, here's a reference. Hey, here's the reference. You know. But there were a bunch. One of the characters later on is very clearly blatantly a reference to Dusty Rhodes. They even call him like the American Dream. He does like his elbow finisher.
Is that Terry Man or a different character?
No, that. See, some characters I had thought like kind of like that. Oh, this seems very similar to Dusty Rhodes, but then there's literally Beauty Rhodes, and that's he literally is just Dusty.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, it is also interesting seeing what does get referenced, I guess, because at least at the point we've read thus far, this is 1979, 1980, which is before the Monday Night Wars, where there was like WWF and WCW going head to head and things were televised and a bunch of the big superstars were around. This is more back in like actually, come to think of it, when was the first WrestleMania? Would that have happened yet?
You can go Google that real quick. Or I will, I guess.
No, WrestleMania 1 was 1985. So
okay, so this was pre-WrestleMania wrestling times.
Yeah, so it's and pre-WrestleMania wrestling is like pre-wrestling being, I don't know, like it was much more territorial. A lot of the promotions were more broken up. Not to say that there weren't still popular characters, obviously, because people in Japan are aware of guys like Dusty Rhodes and Sheik, and Abdullah the Butcher was a guy who was referenced. So obviously there's still some gravitas to the wrestling, but it was before it really was like super commercialized, because WrestleMania was the first big like pay-per-view thing when it really was taking off more. So I guess that's kind of interesting, because it's like wrestling before most of what even I would know of wrestling, like other than the super iconic like Hall of Fame legends who would maybe appear on the stuff I would watch, but they would be like appearing as legends, so I didn't really have like the full context of who they were.
Yeah,
when
you
haven't
watched like every Dusty Rhodes match before 1980 or something like that. You wouldn't. Yeah, you don't have that exactly, but Right. I gotcha. So I guess to talk about the Toku stuff for a bit, like, yeah, there's a bunch of references that I don't want to like go, one by one. Like, I know who the Ultra Brothers are. They're like there's like the 6 Ultra Brothers, and then there's like the extended Ultra Brother family. Not confusing at all. But I guess to briefly talk about, because like it crosses over the Toku, the monsters and the superheroes with the wrestling, and that's not even really like to my understanding of the history of that. Pause and Select, Joe specifically on his side channel, he has a video on Godzilla, and one thing he mentions in that video is Godzilla versus King Kong, which was kind of a response to television at the time, which has pro wrestling, and how Godzilla was sort of taking that into account, like, because that was the first like kaiju battle, so you had Godzilla versus King Kong, and they kind of, now you have a conflict that you could read things into, sort of like a wrestling match or a shonen fight, something like that, and he sort of talks about that, and you especially see that going forward in Toku a lot, where just like Ultraman in particular uses wrestling moves. So this I guess is the first I've directly seen like that, like the mashed together like openly, even though like they've sort of implicitly been like that since whenever Godzilla versus King Kong came out, like the 60s. So yeah, that's a little bit of my perspective. Another one I wanted to mention was wait, did I? Oh no, I guess I just had more one specific reference that I thought was more like, oh, someone watching Toku of the time period would have caught that. But yeah, I guess aside from just the general like, oh, here's where the superhero, and it doesn't just reference Toku, it references a lot of American superheroes too. Like one of the jokes in the first chapter was like, oh, the American superheroes are all spending time with their families, and one of them was like clearly Batman inspired, and I'm like, okay, yeah. But anyway,
I didn't even notice that. I will say though, like as far as the Toku stuff, what was I going to say? Oh no.
That's
that's my opinion on
Maybe
Toku.
We'll
I know nothing.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Well, if you come, if you.
Oh, that's right.
So,
yeah, I wanted to talk about like the translator's notes because
Ah.
earlier on, definitely there was a lot of them, which I think is, there were like a bunch of different translations for this on the site I was using.
It was
like
yeah,
it
was,
definitely
like, the
jumps
really,
around from
yeah.
like there are some more newer kind of updated ones, and then there's like the one that I guess
didn't
was
read
more...
those. I didn't have those. Because was that like the first few chapters or?
Yeah. So I was
Okay.
I was using manga decks.
Yes, so because I did know there was another scanlator group that's planning to go through and they were to redo the start of Kinnikuman up until the scans actually get like decent, and then some of the later parts, which I think have apparently of the original run, which apparently have some really bad stuff, but they're not done yet. So bad timing on our account, but our part. But I didn't read those updated chapters. So go on. Sorry.
But yeah. I hadn't even looked at the release dates, but yeah, some of these chapters I'm looking at, it's like 9 days ago, 4 days ago. So even some of these are very recent, and it was only like the first 2 volumes, maybe. But yeah, I thought that the translator's notes were, at times it could be, especially if some of them would like explain the wrestling references, and I knew the wrestling references, so I'm like, why did I stop to read that text? Because, like, just seeing the blob of text, it's like, I must read it. My eyes are drawn to it. And it's like, no, that literally wasted my energy. I knew the reference.
The anime manga fan dilemma, where it's like, because like I've seen, or no, it was like an episode of a Western show called Firefly, and for some reason they would have one episode that was hard subtitled, and I couldn't turn it off, and I couldn't not read the subtitles. Like, what was I gonna do? I'm just like hardwired for that. So it's similar with like translation notes. Like if you see text, you're just gonna read it. So yeah, I got you there.
But but other than the for the references I didn't understand, it was kind of nice to see like, they're referencing this character from this manga, or
this celebrity or sports star, or all that kind of. No, absolutely. Like did it make it funnier? No, but at least it's like it's a way to sort of bridge the gap, and like it's not just a random thing. It's like it's a cultural reference that we just don't have the context to. So yeah.
There was even a translator's note about the one time that they went to the Kurikan Stadium, and it's like, this is what was like before the Tokyo Dome, and I was like, hey, I made that observation with Joe. If we had read this first, then I wouldn't have gotten to have my moment.
Yeah, no, I thought about that one because they mentioned specifically the stadium and the hall, and I was like, hey, this just came up in the thing we just read. That's funny. But anyway, after that, I just have some more general stuff about the actual manga instead of just like what it's referencing. Because so I'll just mention some chapters, and if you want to go back and mention one that I skipped. So first is to talk about something that isn't even Kinnikuman. Wait, so I didn't realize I was looking at my notes. And I'm like, the first thing I have to say isn't about Kinnikuman. So sorry, I made a mistake. I was like, let's talk about Kinnikuman. Wait, never mind. Pandaman. So I had to check this out because I think I might have made this mistake, because one of the things I knew going into this was the connection of Eiichiro Oda, the author of One Piece, to Kinnikuman, in which he submitted a fan, like, there was a contest, and he submitted a fan Chojin called Pandaman, who would later become an Easter egg character in One Piece. There's other Easter egg characters, but he's like the most well-known one, and he's kind of just he's just a meme in general. Like, when is Pandaman going to become relevant? What's confused me is that in chapter like 11, a character named Pandaman shows up, and I checked, and Oda would have been 4 years old when that chapter came out. So further I dug, and I've made the mistake of associating that Pandaman with Oda's Pandaman, but apparently the Oda's Pandaman was the contest that happened. I believe it was in like the 90s. So this would have been like an adult Oda making Pandaman. That just happens, like the backstory of the character is different, the design is different. He just shares the same name as this one from this this very early manga chapter. So. And I know I've made that mistake because I know in a video I mentioned, I don't remember which one, but I mentioned Kinnikuman and the Oda connection, and I showed one of those pages from that chapter, and I don't know what the context I brought that up in, but if I was saying that, this is Oda's Pandaman, it's not. So I just wanted to clarify that because this is a mistake I've made, because I never read Kinnikuman. It was just a bit of trivia, and I'm like, Oda, Pandaman, Kinnikuman, right? And then I read it, and there's Pandaman. Wait, what? So I just wanted to clear that up more for me, honestly, because, because I've known about this since I was buying the volumes in English, so we're talking like 15 years or so, give or take.
Yeah, it almost kind of makes me think of the, in Dragon Ball, like, Akira Toriyama introduces a character and, he gives the character a name in like a one-off panel, but then when the character shows up in the anime, he couldn't remember what the name of the character was, so he like gave them different names. And then when they come back to those characters in the manga, like the name has changed, and it's not necessarily I don't know. It seems kind of similar in that, like, Oda, I guess, came up with this Pandaman, but there also was a Pandaman before Pandaman. But they're like, I don't know if there was like. If that's where Oda took like the inspiration from, like, oh, hey, here was this character, I'm going to do more with them, and I don't know. Or if it was a pure coincidence that right. Pandaman and Pandaman are two distinct entities, and this is the true mystery of One Piece, that Pandaman will reveal himself, and then the other Pandaman will be the One Piece, and I don't know.
The last arc of One Piece is just Panda versus Panda. The Raftel is just a wrestling ring. Anyway, so yeah, but yeah, what confused me is because like that was a chapter that also mentioned that there were being fan submitted things like in that Kaiju and later Chojin. So I was like, wait, was Pandaman fan submitted too? But it wasn't meant. It would have been he would have mentioned it like he did every chapter. If this here Chojin or this one or Kaiju was submitted by this person. Like, they always credit the person as the submission. But there was none for Pandaman. So yeah, that's what confused me is like, because I was tripping, because I even was talking about it with someone and they even noted that like, yeah, if Oda had submitted Pandaman at age 4 and it showed up in the manga immediately, then that would have helped inspire someone to make manga, you'd think, right? But no, that's not what happened. So anyway, I guess like as far as like stuff to note from the first chapters, to finally talk about Kinnikuman like 25 minutes into the discussion, there was one, I don't know, little chapter that I thought was interesting. It was the one that or let me find that chapter real quick, just so I know exactly, because my notes aren't very good. Okay, yeah, it was a chapter with like the loser monster. What was it called? I don't have its name. I can't find it. But yeah, where like Kinnikuman like started beating up and it just cried, and he kind of connected to it a bit because, they're both losers. And I guess I thought that was a little interesting because I thought about like, you have like you've talked about the insecure shonen protagonists where you have like characters like Naruto or Mob or, who have like successes, but they're still like insecure about their strengths in some ways, but Suguru is just a loser. So it's not quite the same, but I did have that, because by my understanding, like Suguru kind of like Goku popularized like the childish main characters, so, which is why I think of him when I think of like Luffy or Natsu. But Suguru was was a popular idiot hero first. But I don't know. That's just one of a little character thing I noted. But yeah, another. Oh, this was more of a reference that I was like that took me a little longer to realize was a reference. I think it was the chapter with like the kaiju that was like he had like a bottomless stomach and was eating a bunch of things, and he ate and one recurring character like died in his stomach and then is completely fine next chapter.
Yeah.
Well, because I thought that chapter was weird because it ended with some weird like, oh man, humanity sure is like or gluttonous, and there was just so that a really weird moral at the end of that, right? And it was so. And then they're laughing about something that happened in the thing. Yeah, I thought that was weird too. And then I realized what it's doing. A lot of Godzilla movies, or even like Ultraman or Ultra 7. Ultraman and Ultra 7, it wasn't that weird about it. Maybe sometimes. But they just like end up like this. And this is definitely inspired by the first Godzilla movie, which like the whole conflict ends, and then one of the characters talks about how like if nuclear testing doesn't end, then Godzilla will reappear, which I think it worked for that movie. But then in Godzilla vs. King Kong, like Godzilla gets woken by a submarine that crashes into an iceberg, and then some Japanese guys go to at a pharmaceutical company to get Godzilla because they wanted to use him as a mascot, or not Godzilla, King Kong, because they wanted to use him as mascot, and then they fight, and at one point like, it gets really goofy and ridiculous, and at the end some guys are just like, maybe man shouldn't get involved with nature. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, it's just a really absurd moral after the whole thing. Like, when they just slap you with it, sometimes it's just like, what? And so I think this was a parody to that. So it's a Toku, like, it not only is it like a kaiju thing Toku reference, but the way that chapter ended is very much like jabbing at, it feels like a joke because they laugh at it afterwards, and it's just so unlike Kinnikuman. Yeah, so I had to because I just wrote like, what? And then I thought about it later, and it's like, oh, that's just how it goes, because like I said, a lot of Ultraman or Ultra 7 episodes end kind of like that too, but just with the summation of the point, basically. So I just wanted to bring that one up because yeah, it was weird just seeing it without having that Toku context, or before I connected it. So yeah. Okay, I only have two more to mention. Well, one of them was one of the author notes where they talked about how like the Western characters will like speak differently, and then then the author stopped because he was lazy. I got mad because it's like we don't know why he stopped. Did the editors go, or like maybe it was was it the reader response? Was it just like he was trying to we don't know. I just got a little mad at that because maybe it was just tedious and annoying to do and not worth
It also kind of makes me think of in Dragon Ball Dissection, Mysteria Fusion will talk a lot about Toriyama will do different things with like angular speech bubbles and more like rounded speech bubbles, and like, oh, they represent these things with these characters, but then like slowly over time he either stops doing those quirks or he like pays less attention to it or whatever. And he never says something on the point of laziness, but like if that was something.
Yeah, there would be some people, like in this case, the scanlation group for this manga, who would say something like that when it's like, it's a hard job, and especially like keeping so many like art details straight. Like there's lots of corrections in volumes and stuff, so maybe some things didn't get corrected, but like. Yeah, I don't have a problem with like little missed details or mistakes like that. Or in this case, like it's a speech pattern. Like we get it. We don't need I don't need it. Well, then again, I'm not reading it, but still, like I just really hate the idea of blaming the author's laziness. Though I will say, Yudetamago apparently is actually a writer and author duo. So I just wanted to, because I was aware of that, so I just thought I'd throw that out there just so. I don't know, like, is there Yude and then there's Tamago? I have no idea.
Yeah, I guess that's also kind of one of the weird aspects of potential translation notes, is that you can get, kind of like a jokey moment, like disco was popular in 79, where it's like, the translator, like, taking a jab or, like, putting in their own little commentary. But then you also have, like, it's a lazy author couldn't keep up with this trait that they... And it's like, I mean, should the translators be throwing in their own notes? Who can say?
Funny, because apparently I think it was Inuyasha, but someone on my server was talking about how, like, there's sometimes scanlators just inject their opinions, which is like, no, please stop. We don't care. Like, no one cares about the actual scanlation group. They just want the manga. So...
Yeah, I realized that I kind of ended on, like, who can say, as if, like, I don't have an opinion, but it's more like, I don't know. That's a separate discussion that would be, like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway. And I guess the last thing I want to say about the episodic stuff is there was one, probably the gag I thought was funny, because there was the one weird one with the guy who, like, oh, I sold my wife. You're like, you better sell your wife to get these tickets. Like, what the fuck? And then during one match, like, they brought out, like, a monster, and then he's like, oh no, they bought my sold wife, and I didn't expect that, and it caught me out guard. It was stupid, but so yeah, I just thought I'd mention that because I thought it was funny at the time. So, but yeah, so did you have anything specific to say about the episodic chapters, or shall we get into the actual arc?
Yeah, with I kind of already said most of my, like, general thoughts, and I feel like dwelling on anything specifically with it, there wasn't enough, like, intrigue in much of the specific moments to really feel like there's much that I can say about.
Okay.
This will be a bit of a shorter episode for that reason.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what's the point of, like, dwelling on those chapters and going through it beat by beat if it's like, yeah, that happened, and then this happened, and then that, Absolutely right. That's why I figured we'd only start that, if at all, during the
the Chojin Olympics and the American tour, because those are actually like arcs where there's things going on.
I guess, well, one last thing I guess I could say, the fact that the chapters are also really short, there's not much depth to the like potential for the jokes that get brought up, I guess, or the conflicts per chapter, because these are shorter than, even normal Jump chapters, which will be, anywhere from like 18 to 20, maybe sometimes a little shorter than that. But a lot of these would be like 12, 13, maybe 14 pages.
Which is, I think, maybe this was normal back then, because I just realized this is probably the oldest Jump manga I've read, which means it's also the oldest one you've read. But
yeah, because Ashitano Joe is Weekly Shonen Magazine, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't
and
Jump
also,
at the
like,
very least.
Well, we can't really talk about like the chapter lengths in Joe because they were all in volumes and not broken up into chapters. So I certainly don't know when the chapters began or ended half the time.
But I think Dragon Ball, those chapters tend, at least in the start, were like 15 pages. So maybe that was just a more normal page length, and it sort of gradually became 18 to 20 as it is in the modern era. But I'm not sure about. So it might also be like a difference. Like maybe gag comedies aren't expected to have long page counts, where something like a more story driven one.
No, yeah,
might.
I think there definitely are pros and cons to the length. Like, on the one hand, I can speed through it relatively quickly because the chapters are so short. And if a joke isn't really landing, I don't have to dwell on it much.
Mm-hmm.
But,
yeah, there's like a rapid fireness to it, because it's like, that chapter sucked. Maybe the next, or that chapter wasn't super good. Let's check out the next one. Yeah, that kind of thing. But what I was gonna say something else. Fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, I don't remember. Oh well. But anyway, moving on to the Chojin Olympics. I guess one thing to start from the outset is I thought it was kind of interesting that, like, yeah, he had all these sent in fan Chojin, and he used a bunch of them, and then, like, I guess what was surprising is that, like, yeah, especially like Robin Mask and Ramen Man become like recurring characters, especially Robin Mask, who's like probably my favorite character in the series so far. Yeah, like here's a fan submitted character. I'm gonna make him one of the most important ones. So it's I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah.
But anyway, for the actual like preliminaries or anything, I don't have much to say. They just kind of bunch like this is where it starts to make the transition from gag into more like there's still a lot of comedy and stuff, but it does become more of a serious narrative. Once you get to the actual fights and stuff, at least relatively speaking. But I guess what kind of surprised me about it though is because they get into, I think it's Ramen Man, Brocken Man, and Curry Man, and they're like, oh, super violent. And then, like, Ramen Man fucking rips a dude in half.
Yeah.
And I was, like, stunned. I was like, hold the fuck on. What?
Yeah, and the one guy, like, they even... Because he's German, so they reference, like, the Nazi gas chambers. Yeah. And it's like, okay. This is a comedy manga. Okay.
Yeah. I was just kind of... Yeah, like just I'm looking at this page, but yeah, where they mention the gas chambers, and then Ramen Man kicks Brocken Man in the mouth, and like there's a bunch of blood, and then he fucking rips him in half, and he's like lifting the body up, and there's blood splattering everywhere. It's like I was like stunned for a moment or two. I was like, what the fuck? It's just such a marked, like, it just goes from, like, I think we were joking about, like, the gradual shift to darkness, or talking about the gradual shift to darkness, like, around Raven Fairy Tale, but, like, it doesn't, like, change the tone of the manga. It just happens. It's really brutal. Like, I guess I wouldn't say it doesn't change it, because it does shift to being a bit more serious, because, this is more violence and not in a comedic way. Like, it's all the characters are reacting with horror and stuff, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah, some of the, I don't know. It was definitely a weird adjustment getting to the Olympics section, and it starts to go in that more action-oriented direction, and starts to get more of like a seriousness to the story. Mm-hmm. But then, especially like once it gets into the later stages, you kind of forget that like, well, these people were all like heroes, and so it's like, how did these people who are apparently so violent and whatever, like, become heroes? And there's no real dwelling on, like, is there, like, some sort of corruption with the system there? Like, none of it's considered. It's just, like, a tone shift. And it's like, I'm not
Well,
vibing with it.
Yeah, two things that you made me think of. One is that, which is like, yeah, this actually predates the kind of like, well, like, maybe it is part of the Toku influence because like Kamen Rider and like, or maybe a little bit later, Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star, yeah, they just kill whoever they're fighting. And then, but I also thought like this kind of predates the kind of, like the anti-hero movement of like the late 80s and 90s in American comics, you know, where the Punisher, the dark edgy kind of stuff. So maybe, you know, so at first I was like, oh, maybe it's a reference to that, but no, it's like, no, it's just like, yeah, but it is really weird to see that violence on, in this case, other superhumans, you know, in this case, like, you know, like, where in like Kamen Rider he beats the shit out of monsters, and like I think it's aimed at an older audience, but Kamen Rider Amazon like apparently gets like, it's weird to think of like the kaiju suit, they're kaiju suits, but it's still kind of gory, and even Ultra 7 has like a bunch of bloody decapitations. So yeah, there's just some violence here, but like I said, it's usually not on human characters. That I'm not. I haven't seen as much of in the older Toku that I've watched, or even a lot of more modern stuff I've watched. I'm sure it exists, but it's just not as common. I said two things, but I forgot the other thing. This isn't it, but I do think it's funny that Terry Man just has a gun sometimes because he's American.
Yeah.
Violence. Maybe those were the two things. I can't remember what. Not the Terry Man thing, but
Well, I thought it was also kind of a little strange. I think it's the very first chapter when he's introduced. With how the chapter ends, it's you know, there's like the message of like, oh, he won't do anything unless people pay him, and then Kinnikuman goes in to, you know, do the thing for that one kid free of charge, and then he's like, oh, I'm gonna leave, but then he like turns around and it just kind of like ends there, like there's no conflict or anything at the end of the chapter. I don't know, it just felt kind of strange to me at the time. But yeah, he definitely goes into that role of being, you know, kind of like the best friend rival type.
It's interesting because Kinnikuman kind of, it has like the best friend rival character in Terry Man, and then has the kind of like antagonistic rival character in Robin Mask, who he's not really villainous, but he's definitely like, he's not, you know, that's kind of the vibe I got. Because he's more of like the Vegeta, the prideful warrior kind of thing, less so than outright, like he, you know, he's still like the antagonist, like he fights Kinnikuman a lot, but he's, you know, he's not a villain. He's not like oh, that's what I want to talk about, the moral stuff, because like where there's just kind of like this almost like, yeah, there's good guys and then there's like, you know, less good guys, or well, like, because when they got to the American tour and there's like the three organizations, I'm like, okay, why did Kinnikuman join this one specifically? And then we find out that one of the other ones is like, we allow for new entrants by when they like rip off the heads of heroes and show them to us, and that's how we decide. And I'm like, okay, yeah, they're the bad guys. Because yeah, you're right, there is no real moral introspection or anything like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, as far as the fights go, I really don't have anything to say until Robin Mask versus Kinnikuman. Like Terry Man gets a little flashback and some stuff, but and of course the injury or what?
Well, yeah, I did also think it was kind of weird because like with Ramen Man, you have the big these characters are so violent, and then he just kind of becomes a goofy sort of side character, and I don't know, it's just like weird tonal stuff. Like you'd think, you know, with the other, like with Terry Man and with Robin Mask, there's definitely like a, you know, on like the heel face dynamic, they're definitely all like the baby faces, even if they have like their little things that are played up to the crowd, like heel turns, like when Terry Man does, you know, does all his cheating because he had the leg injury,
and that desperation to not lose, and yeah.
But definitely, like Ramen Man is more of a he's a full on heel. He's the evil guy who's evil, and then he loses, and then he's like, no, I have to support Kinnikuman for my honor. I don't know.
That was probably Ramen Man's most interesting moment, where he's like, he wants Kinnikuman to win, or at least, you know, put up a good fight so that it doesn't like make, you know, like waste his, you know, loss. Like, you know, he has some pride in, or he wants to have pride in his loss. Like it wasn't, because part of the conflict is Kinnikuman's dumb luck, where he just, you know, things happen because he's an idiot, and he's kind of like clumsily doing what like Naruto or not Naruto. Well, I guess sometimes Naruto, but I mostly like Goku or Luffy with their kind of like moments of like smart, like battle insight, where with Suguru it kind of happens. He's just stupid, and it just kind of works out for him in a lot of ways. But they even say like, oh, you can't beat Robin Mask with just your dumb luck. But yeah, no, I like I like how you do have all the wrestling like terminology to talk about the series from, like you're just a babyface, and I'm like, what the fuck? What are you talking about?
I will at least say this isn't. At least so far, we haven't come across any issues like in Ojamajo Doremi, when the translation is like, oh, this character does a reverse tombstone pile driver, and I'm like, that's a Boston Crab. You're not even close. Like, at least here, the moves that they're calling are, if they're not the exact name, or it's a move that has like multiple names, like they're at least close enough. Like it's nothing is incorrect.
Right. Like, or they're like twisting the name like to make it like a signature attack to attack you recognize like the root part, and it's similar to the actual move or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
I would hope that a series that is more about wrestling would understand the wrestling, as opposed to like a magical girl thing that just has it like once.
Well, yeah, definitely. Like with the Doremi thing, I could tell like in the audio that they said Boston, or I don't.
Oh, it was there's a subtitle thing. That's true, right?
Yeah, it was. So it was more of like the translation. So at least like the people who were translating Kinnikuman understood the references, and it's not like we're not going to mix up a submission move where the character is on the ground with a pile driver where you spike someone's head into the
How long ago did you watch that episode?
It was last year, so I don't think it's been funny. But yeah, that stuck with me. I'm not going to forget that. The Doremi subgroup, you know what you did. I'm coming for you.
That was funny. Thank you. But anyway, so I'm skimming through, and I like this little interaction where like Terry Man, he got caught cheating and he loses, and and then it's like his injury and stuff, and then like you have the three of them like, oh, I'll give up my position, with Kinnikuman of course doing it because he just doesn't want to fight. But then it's like, it's like within one page, it's like, wow, this is such an honored, such a display of friendship and honor. And at the end of the page, Terry Man's like, I'm gonna fucking kill Kinnikuman.
Yeah. And it doesn't even get much of a payoff.
Yeah, no, that definitely happens where it seems like there's like build up to something, like with Terry Man and his leg later. That one especially, I thought, where one chapter is like Kinnikuman's like, I'll convince Terry Man to put on his leg and fight, and the next chapter is like, yeah, I talked him off screen, he's fine.
Yeah,
like, which and just talk about this kind of like as someone who, so I've been writing a fanfic lately, and I had a draft for like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do for this one chapter, and I start writing it, and I hate it, and so I throw it out. And then, like, next week, I have, a better one, and I was able to write this one, and it's good. But so, maybe he had ideas, and then when actually he's, like, sitting down to write them, he didn't like them, and he threw them out, and he's like, well, now what do I do? So I'll just move the story along. So, like, while it is dissatisfying as a reader, I can kind of understand how this might have happened from a writer's perspective.
Yeah,
which
and definitely if you are doing it, week to week. And
yes, because I didn't have a deadline, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, so I
because like even with that twist, like I fully expected it to be like, oh, Meat and Kinnikuman were talking about something super inconsequential, and he just happened to walk in at the wrong time and overhear something that sounds bad. But we didn't even get like that kind of a payoff. But the way that you phrased it now, it does kind of make sense that when you're on that crunch, and especially with Kinnikuman, a lot of it. I don't know, by this point it was more serialized, but, coming from that episodic nature as well, like maybe there was still some, adjusting to how to tell this story, and that's also a thing, like authors will definitely get more of a handle on how they want to tell their story in the framework that they have, the more that they do it.
I fully expect that we have not gotten to the best arcs in the series yet, even if at the end of the day we give we're feeling like maybe a 5 for the manga. I still feel like we're in the weaker parts, which even was true with Ashita Joe. Like, we still enjoyed the first parts, but it got so like right after that was Rikishi, which was our favorite stuff, so
Yeah, and like right now, I'm watching the Ashita Joe anime, and going through those earlier parts, I think is a lot easier now because I know what's coming, and
Yes.
I'm able to see the little setups, and it's like, ooh, yes.
But anyway, we get to getting to the match. Like they make all their bets. Like, oh, whoever loses has to leave their home country. Oh yeah, that's right. There was the Conquerors hockey moment where like there's a bunch of rampaging wild animals and Robin Mask just like intimidates them to unconsciousness, and I'm like, oh my god, he has Conquerors hockey. Well, they call it sleeping power, but I don't like. I wonder if is that what it doesn't come up again. So like, was that actually what it's called, or was there another name and this was just how they translate it? Like the translation seems pretty fine, honestly. Otherwise, like, well, I wouldn't even say otherwise. So that's just the thing I thought about. But yeah, I guess one of the reasons I like Robin Mask is I like also going into the fight. He's like, he refuses to underestimate Kinnikuman. Like, even though he's a joke, he's an idiot, he's incompetent. Like, Robin Mask still is going to treat him like a serious foe, like anyone. Like, he's recognizing Kinnikuman where no one else will, basically. And I was like, yeah, Robin Mask. But yeah, I guess there was also the Terry Man Robin Man fight, but it's like, that was a fight.
Yeah, I feel like there's maybe something I can say on that fight, but I'm not. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. I mean, okay, I guess like what I was thinking about it was that like it's kind of the. I don't know, like if you think in a shonen tournament nowadays, there'd always be like it'd be fun to see the main character fight the best friend character, but then it's also like, but then there's also the other rival character who's been built up to this point, and so like I guess it's kind of I don't know, just like an effective use of jobbing and setting up stuff, dramatic payoffs. I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about, because like, yeah, you mentioned like, yeah, there's kind of two ways it comes out. Either the main character and the best friend fight, like Goku versus Krillin, or the friend gets he jobs, like Yamcha versus Jackie Chun, you know, where it just like or Yamcha versus anyone really. But yeah, no, in this, this goes to the Terry Man, because like, he gets his whole fight and dramatic stuff with Robin Mask, and it helps to build up Robin. So, but anyway, then we get Kinnikuman versus Robin Mask. Like Kinnikuman's even like taking it seriously for the first time, and yeah, this was probably my favorite part of the manga thus far. Oh, and of course you have the trope where it's like, oh, Robin Mask removed his armor. He actually does it to restrain his power. And I'm like, damn, this trope is old.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what I thought was interesting about, because like, Robin Mask kind of gets undone by his pride. Like he's sort of like, he tries to be perfect, and he's, certain that he's wins. So like, he was like, yeah, I broke Kinnikuman's bones, but it was his luck, but also like, he gave in, or he's like, yeah, I won. He was overconfident in his success, where Kinnikuman, he sort of snuck the win out from under him. So you kind of have like the strengths of the winner versus the strengths of the loser versus the weaknesses of the winner, kind of like Suguru's used to losing, so he also like keeps getting up and kind of keeps fighting because he's lost so many times, like we've talked about, failure has come up before, but with Suguru, he's kind of like been an eternal failure. So he already has that kind of persistence, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I enjoyed the conflict. And I was like, oh my god, actual conflict here. Am I Kinnikuman? Did you have anything to say on the Chojin Olympics or nah?
I mean, yeah, I guess I'd probably agree that towards the end, it's definitely... I guess at its most interesting.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, relatively speaking. But even then, I don't know. There's not much that I've had to really take away from it yet. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's more. I keep thinking that like maybe there's more I have to say on this, and then I'm like, no.
No, it's like this is definitely like I'm not gonna say there's like thematic, like because we like to talk about themes and stuff. But maybe there's some later stuff that like starts framing, like recognizing what's been there and building up, and then like frames it, or uses it in a better way. Or maybe that never happens. I have no idea. But I am looking. I don't know. Like I said, I think that the best parts of the manga are in front of us. So I do hope that we start to enjoy it even a little bit more. I just realized it'd be funny if you gave it a 5, and I could say, well, you gave Bleach a 5, so. You raised it. I just think it's funny. And also, I like the cover page that has all the original fans submitted drawings for like all the heroes that the Chojin that he used. That was cool.
Yeah, giving credit to the original artists. That's what the real. I don't know. I was trying to think of a meme, and it wasn't coming to me.
Then we get to the American tour arc, and do I even have anything to say? Like, I have, like, almost no notes on it.
I did think... See, this is a part of, like, my wrestling background, I guess. Mm-hmm. To me, I thought it was kind of interesting, but, like, possibly not intentional. I don't know if it was.
Go for it.
But the whole thing where there are, like, these two factions, and there's, like, this third underground group that is, you know, because you have, like, I'm almost even then I'm not like 100% sure, but I'm almost positive that like the WSF is supposed to be like a, you know, like a knockoff of like the WWF, which basically like what I was kind of thinking of here with the premise of it, which maybe I'm reading subtext that isn't even trying to be there. But especially because like the Monday Night Wars did not happen yet, WrestleMania had not happened yet, but it reminded me of what actually happened in real life with wrestling in the States, where there were all these little territorial promotions, and you could say like the power was broken up into all these different things. But then more in like the 80s, WWF starts to look to go more commercial, and it starts gobbling up all the territories and taking all their stars and really elevating itself, which is also like crushing everything else underneath. And so the fact that, and I was also thinking like, is there like I don't remember the names of the factions. There's like the WSC, which I don't know what that's supposed to be. Then there's the WSA, which I'm like, is that like the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, which is a more like old school, predates WWE, WWF, I guess, in the context of this. And so like, I don't know if there's supposed to be like some kind of commentary like these, especially because like if this, I could read this as like a WCW and WWF parallel, where these two big wrestling conglomerates form and they like battle it out, and eventually it just ends in like one giant monopoly. Because for those of you who don't know the wrestling lore, the Monday Night Wars happened. It was when the two shows like aired against each other in like prime time, and eventually one of the companies lost, and then they went bankrupt, and WWE or WWF won, and they became the big wrestling monopoly. And even now in like 2020, wrestling is only now seemingly like starting to recover and build up more of that independent circuit again, where there's more things for wrestlers to do other than just go to this one company. But again, like to read all that through Kinnikuman, considering it predates all of that, you know, at this point maybe the WWF was starting to like expand its reach, but you know, it definitely wasn't to the point of where it was in the 90s when things really were just the two giants duking it out. So there's my ramble. That's about the most interesting thing potentially I could say about this. And like I said,
that's kind of what I was hoping for. But where I had the reference to the weird morals that you get at the end of Toku movies or episodes. Like I was wondering like if there are any like wrestling like more relatively deep cuts. And this is like, even if it's incidental, that's still pretty interesting because it did like you're associating with things that happened after the manga. So did Kinnikuman predict the future of wrestling? Like
because like one of the companies wasn't officially like founded until late in the 80s. And that was when it kind of just bought out a pre-existing company and just really started going from there. But then it's like, I really don't think the WSC is like synonymous with Jim Crockett Promotions, because there's not even like a letter, an easy like letter thing to make out of that. Like, how do you get WSC from, you know, it doesn't really work. So I don't know. Yeah. So like, again, maybe maybe I'm getting nothing. Maybe this is all completely unrelated. But it was kind of interesting to me, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there was also like the earlier stuff with Kamehame, which is really hard to say without accidentally saying Kamehameha.
Yeah, there was one panel where they mentioned Kamehame, and the next line was ha 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 ha, and I'm like,
And then there was the what's his face, the other guy, who isn't named out, or who doesn't have a name similar to the iconic Dragon Ball attack, Mavia. And yeah, I guess the fight was fine. Like, Kinnikuman gets his training arc, and then like, Mavia is able to react to other people, but he's not able to act as well, where Kinnikuman can do both, so he like draws Mavia and do acting, and, beats him at his own game, kind of. I was like, yeah, there's a fight, there's something going on there. And then the rest of the arc happened, and I'm like, yeah, this is, like I said, at the start, I didn't even realize, like, okay, why are they doing, why is Kinnikuman with the WSA specifically? And then, oh, wait, that's because this other group is, like, obviously evil. That explains it. Is like Kinnikuman disguise? Well, I guess that is a reference to wrestling, because you have like other like wrestlers disguising as other, not even disguising, but they just play other characters. Like what was it? The Undertaker had a bunch of characters or roles over his career, right? Or I mean, someone else.
I don't know if he would specifically be like the best point of reference, but there definitely are people who have gone through different gimmicks. Like technically, like Undertaker did have different gimmicks. Like there's one point where he has like a midlife crisis and becomes a badass biker dude. But otherwise, he's one of the rare ones where like his kind of seemingly goofy, outdated kind of like 80s or not 80s, 90s, like when wrestlers were like the big larger than life characters, and he's like this Undertaker dude, like that's kind of goofy, like he can do all these magic things, but somehow it stuck for him. But yeah, you do definitely have people who will go through different characters until they really find something that sticks.
Gotcha. Because I just thought about that, because I Kinnikuman disguised himself as the Channel Man to go undercover, and I was like, wait, is this a, like, well, I'm also thinking of, I don't know the character, but there's this one gif I've seen from a wrestling thing where there's like a wrestler going by a crowd, and then like a guy in a mask stands up and like punches him, and he takes off the mask, and it's like he's got like the makeup that matches the mask. So it's like he was disguising as a member of the audience who was like, it was fun, and out of context it's pretty funny, because it's like,
so it's just like he's disguised as himself.
Exactly, or a fan wearing a mask of him. It's funny and weird, yeah, right. Yeah, so that, that kind of thing, like, yeah, masks and disguises are like kind of just an inherent thing, or even personas. That might be another way to put it. With wrestling, so Kinnikuman having this like secret identity kind of, and I just thought, hey, that's like a wrestling thing.
I think the maybe that wasn't the intent, but it's definitely the vibe I got, especially the part later when he's like, oh, I was from, he was like, oh, I'm an African Choujin, and I'm like, did he do a blackface? Is that what this is?
I think it is. Oh my god, because they even say that he put like a shoe polish on his blackface. I didn't think about that. That's kind of oh Jesus Christ. That's oh man, that's a little weird.
It's one of those things where like, I don't know, I don't see it often much, so it's like it almost feels too cartoony that like surely they wouldn't do that, but
yeah, they kind of did, and they went there. I didn't think about. Yeah, you're right. It could. Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that there. That's a little. Oh boy. Oh yeah, that's right. There was the stuff with Robin Mask coming back, ripping a dude in half.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and they get their sky fight in the Grand Canyon, and see like it definitely ends off like, oh my god, did Robin Mask die? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Because like there's definitely like, he broke up with his family, he continued to like there's stuff going on there, but I feel like it's just incomplete even though the arc is over. I don't know, maybe someone else will have some. I know someone from my server will be he said he's already started rereading and he's going to be commenting, so we'll have something to look forward to. Maybe he'll know some interesting stuff on the reread. Also, I guess I did have because like and one thing he actually mentioned on the reread, because we got like Kinnikuman's backstory with how he was mistaken for a pig and tossed out of the ship.
Oh, yeah!
Apparently that gets, like, retconned or just ignored later. Because I guess more stuff with, like, his lineage and the family comes up, but that's just, like, hearsay. So we'll see how it actually happens, but...
That's unfortunate, because that was one of the gags where I'm like, that's kind of funny. Especially, like, the whole chapter where it's like, oh, and then the pig won, the world title on our planet, and he became king. And it was such, like, a goofy thing that it feels like something that would be... Like, if you're going to reference something from this, like, I don't know, that feels like something that would be, like, an easy reference as, like, a goofy little, like, haha.
Yeah, that would have been cool to have more of a, like, retroactive foreshadowing where, you know, instead of, like, I mean, maybe the, or I'm assuming...
Or,
no,
like,
maybe
the pig comes back and he's like, you thought I was just you thought I was just here for a one-off joke, but I was actually, I don't know.
Right, no, there's definitely fun, like, the retroactive foreshadowing that, you know, authors can do and probably haven't done in other series, so maybe we'll see something, like, there are recurring characters, like, even in this arc you have the Skull Guy and the one kaiju who Kinnikuman beat up, who've been on this, like, long vengeance quest throughout the whole, like, stretch of chapters, like, and then at one point I think there's a referee who's, like, the one bullied monster who hung out with Kinnikuman for a little bit, like, you see, you do have recurring characters already from that stretch of chapters, so, but I wonder if there'll be any, like, because again, we talked about the Shounen thing, where you get the reference from long ago, and it's like, I remember that, and it's cool, you know, so maybe we'll get some of that. But anyway, you get the round robin, and do I have anything to say? I don't know. I guess there was a team fight where, like, you know, Kinnikuman doesn't understand teamwork until, like, even though, you know, Kinnikuman's like a dumbass, Terryman still, like, you know, protected or helped, like, he softened the blow for him by, like, going under him, and that kind of helped Kinnikuman to understand it. And yeah, teamwork, I guess, friendship.
I guess that's kind of interesting, because there was also the one-off chapter where they did, like, a goofy tag match, but it was you know, like, way back in the early days, so I don't know if there was supposed to be, like, a kind of like a parallel there. I don't know.
I didn't think that. I'd have to reread that and compare them and maybe see if I noticed anything, because I forgot about that completely.
Yeah, because, like, in that one, it was back when, like, Terryman was clearly, like, the star, and Kinnikuman didn't really... He was still in his goofy, nobody taking him seriously phase. But then he's like, oh, I'll give the you know, I'll like share the glory with Kinnikuman. Like, I'll give him the big comeback and he can win the day. And then afterwards he's like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, because it's Kinnikuman and he's a goof.
But yeah, I'm skimming through. I'm trying to see if there's more to say, because, like, you know, I just, you know, their fights, they're happening. Oh yeah, I did like when Ramaman kind of came in for commentary, and he's like, he may be a violent Chojin, but he has standards. Like, he gets rid of all the weapons from the magician. Oh yeah, that's right. And there was the whole thing with the kid who had also lost a leg and was afraid to, like, well, because, like, when Terryman like loses a leg and is revealed to be, you know, disabled, like, he's kind of like the crowd kind of turns away from him, like he's weak because of his, you know, disability. But then the one kid kind of like connects to him for that and comes to the ring, and, like, there's that whole aspect to it, like the kind of ableism thing, I suppose. It's not major, but it's neat. It's there. And I guess that's kind of where the final arc, like, ends up. Which, you know, because I just realized, like, maybe there's not a I don't know about contrast, but just, like, because the magician, actually, he's also missing a hand, but he had, like, a knife underneath. I just noticed. Don't know if there's more to take from that, like, contrast wise, but I just noticed it as, like, oh, the antagonist also has, like, you know, they're missing a part of their body. So, but yeah, I don't have much else to say. You know, there's fights. I like the one with Ramen Mask versus Kinnikuman. You know, that it's mostly just stuff happening. And I don't know, like, I definitely, we both fell asleep reading it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading, I think it was during the American tour. Actually, I was just, like, I was sitting on my chair and I was, like, leaning my arm on my elbow on my armrest, and I had my head rested in my hand, and I just, like, passed out there for, like, an hour, half an hour, I don't even remember. I don't remember falling asleep to reading to manga before. Like, watching an episode, that's a little different because it's more passive. Yeah. Manga's more active, so I've never had that happen before. And you were telling me it's like, yeah, I was reading it and then I took a nap and I woke up feeling like shit. So, and it's like, damn, sorry for Kinnikuman, but man, like I hope we like it more later. But that's we'll see. And maybe some comments will shed some light on some even little things like just chapters you liked or something like that. I don't know, I'm interested in seeing, because again, like you said, like with the Shonen research, is like this isn't a series that's super popular, like it's known, and there's definitely have to have been people who've read it, but where are they? At least they're not making AniTube videos.
Yeah.
So
I feel like the most, if it had been discussed at all, the most would be like kind of like what you said you had done, where it's like, oh, this thing was referenced in Kinnikuman, but it's more of like, Kinnikuman was an inspiration. I haven't seen Kinnikuman, but
yeah,
I'm
people
aware
know of it, but haven't taken the extra step. And if they did, like, oh, how many volumes of gag comedies do I have to get to before it gets good? Will it ever get good? Yeah. I don't know. Like, there's a like we're stuck. We're trapped. We have 37. We have 31 more volumes to read. So the rest of the stretches are going to be pretty long. So I just realized, like, wait, we only read like 6 volumes out of 37 in 4 episodes is the current plan. Maybe that'll change, but I don't. At the same time, it's not very discussion heavy. So like we got a lot of the general stuff out, right? Like most of this episode, I felt like I was talking more about general Toku, general wrestling, and sort of applying that to Kinnikuman than actually talking about Kinnikuman. So going forward, even though we're talking about more stuff, I feel like, relatively speaking, they'll be the actual discussions will probably be shorter. Like it still might be like a 1 or 2 hour discussion, but on like twice as much volume material, basically. So, yeah. Please don't suck the rest of Kinnikuman.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that there's just not more little things in there that'll be like, oof.
Yeah, the blackface. I didn't think about that. And it's not even like, because I was even talking about like the problematic stuff with Harimau and the colonialism, but it's like, even if that is problematic, there's interesting and things I like in that fight and that conflict. And even if there's like also the parts where like, please just send him home, he doesn't want to fight anymore. Yeah. Where this is just like, it just happens. And
yeah, there's not much to say about it. It's just kind of like a detail that's there.
Yeah. Right. It just happens. It's like, yeah, that's a little, okay. Anyway, thank you for listening. I don't remember where we're reading to next. I gotta pull up the chapters.
This is where we find out the next reading is 300 chapters. We have to...
Let's just finish it. Just rip off the Band-Aid. We're done. So next time is chapters 80 through 159. So 80 chapters basically. And then after that is where you're gonna get the 100 chapter stretches. So, brace yourselves. Brace us. You guys don't have to read along. We have to read. So, like I said, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.